Speaking of exorcisms, I just finished reading a book called My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. And if I'm going to talk about exorcism books, I'm going to include The Exorcist and now My Best Friend's Exorcism. They may be the only two I've read so far, but I'm hit it batting 100. I'm going to do a review on My Best Friend's Exorcism. I already did one on Horror Store. And stay tuned. That's what we're here for, baby. I just recently, in the last few days, finished reading this book, and I wanted to kind of give a review for what I thought. And I'll try not to give too many spoilers out, and also try not to be so vague that it sounds like some bitch didn't even read the book. But I'll try to find that happy medium and get in there. Recently, I read for the first time a Grady Hendrix story called HORRORSTOR, and I posted my thoughts on that book, a review for HORRORSTOR, and I really liked it. It sounded like a good book, and by the time I was done with it, I liked it, and I decided that I was going to keep some of the limited editions of Grady Hendrix that I already had from SST Publications, and that I was going to move on and try the next one. And the next one that I had in the house was My Best Friend's Exorcism. Now, just reading the plot summary, it didn't sound as good to me as HORRORSTOR. Did I say horror story before? HORRORSTOR. It didn't sound as good to me as HORRORSTOR, but it tends to be what people say is their favorite Grady Hendrix book. So I broke out. You can see here Softcover, the SST limited edition cover there. I broke out the softcover and I jumped in, and within sentences, I was already hooked. I wanted to know what was going to go on here. And to start with, the book, it talks about, well, it starts with a lady named Abby. It sounds like an adult. She's divorced, has children, things like this, and she reads on her computer, or she reads on the news about the exorcist. Just the exorcist died. He died trying to help somebody in a roadside situation, and it made her think back to her teenage years with her friend Gretchen, riding in her car. That she had a name for it. I think it was called the Dust Bunny, riding in her car. And then from there it jumps back even farther to the age of 10. And this girl, Abby, was planning a birthday party at the skating rink. She was into ET, and skating was the rage, and she was excited to make friends and show all the kids at school how great she had become at learning to skate. She was really excited to show off. But before that date came about, another girl in class advertised that she was having a party at her house at a horse ranch, and as it turns out, all the kids chose to go to the horse ranch instead, except this one girl who was new in school, and Abby didn't know her. She was a little bit weird. Her parents were very strict. This girl showed up named Gretchen at the skating party, and Abby was depressed because Gretchen bought her a present, and the present was a pocket Bible, or a Bible of some sort, and she wanted ET stuff, and so she thought the present was lame. But when she got to spend a little bit of private time with Gretchen, turns out they hit it off, became fast friends, best friends, and then from there the story moves on to high school, and now there's a group of four friends. Another girl named Glee and Margaret are part of their group, and they're teenagers, and they make good grades in school, but they get into trouble. All of Abby's friends are rich kids. Abby's a poor kid. Her father repairs mowers and in the yard. He doesn't make any money. Her mom works several jobs, and Abby is going to this well-off school, private school, under scholarship. Because her grades are so good, she's able to go to school with her rich friends whose parents paid their way into the school. Well, at one point, they're at one of the girls' house, and somebody gets the bright idea to try LSD. This was I think this would have been 82, or it was in the 80s. One of the girls got the bright idea to try LSD. She had sourced some. They all put the LSD in their mouth. Nothing happened. But later on, one of the girls, Gretchen, decides to go swimming, go skinny dipping in the river behind this house. And she takes off running. They think she's stoned. She jumps off into the river, which is, the water's really low, and they're afraid she's going to be hurt, and they can't find her. They search all night for her. Finally, Abby finds her in a shed. She finds her in a shed, and she's not herself, and she's not herself again for a long time. As though I think Abby starts to realize that she starts to realize something bad's wrong with my friend. And so things go on. Gretchen starts going downhill bad. And I won't get into all the details, but she goes really bad downhill to where she's not the same person anymore. And at the school, they're having some sort of an assembly, and a group comes in. I can't remember the name of the group, but it's something that actually existed back then. I remember the power team, I think, is what they might have been called in real life. These bodybuilder, powerhouse, weightlifting, Christian evangelist type of a thing. They come in and they do amazing feats of strength, and they compare their feats of strength with God's power and things like that, trying to win over converts to Christianity. And one of them just randomly points to Gretchen and says that she's possessed by a demon, not knowing anything about the issues that have come up, said that she's possessed by a demon. And over time, Abby starts to agree. And at times, Gretchen would reach out, almost like herself again, begging Abby to help. Abby didn't know what to do. She would try to go to the adults, and every time she'd go to adults, things would get worse and worse and worse. And before you know it, she's the bad guy now. She's the one they're trying to kick out of school, that they don't want her to be around her friends because she's trying to help. And this thing that's taking control over Gretchen is manipulating events. Ultimately, its goal is to ruin everybody's life that it touches, everybody's life. And at some point, it takes over, complete control. And Gretchen's like a brand new person, better than ever on the outside is how it appears, better than ever. But she's got there's stuff going on. So things start going bad for all the people around. And I think that's about as far as I can go without getting too much into it. There were some really neat stuff in the book, some funny lines. This is a book that a couple of literalies, two literalies. People say literally a lot, but there were literally two things that happened when I read this book that it almost never happened to me when I read a book. One was I laughed out loud, and I actually did. Like that. And it was enough so that people in the other room heard it, and they said, "I wonder what you were laughing about." But there was a line in the book, and I'll just say the line, but in its context, it gave me a chuckle. This person that's referred to as the exorcist, at one point in the story, he yells, "Hot damn, we got ourselves a demon." And when I read that, it just hit me right and made me laugh. And there was some tongue-in-cheek stuff in this otherwise horror novel. Also, the other literally was this book literally made me cry. And I'm not talking about eyes watering up and I fight it back. I'm talking about tears running down the cheeks, hoping nobody walks in and sees this scene. So it made me cry, made me actually laugh, two literallys in the story. One other thing in this book, there's a guy that tells somebody, literally, he says, "Stay frosty," in the book. I'd never read that line before in a book either. But this story, like HORRORSTOR, I don't want to give anything else away. We're getting more into spoiler territory, but I'm not going to say any spoilers here. But like HORRORSTOR, this book had a point towards the end where I thought, okay, we've wrapped it up. Problem solved. Now it's time to just dot some I's and cross some T's and say the end and go away. And it didn't happen. At that point, we started to get into stuff that made me say, okay, I thought we had this solved. I thought we had our happy ending is here, but it's getting bad. And it happened to me with HORRORSTOR also, where I thought we were done, but things got bad, and you get a bit of a lull. Not a lull, but I get worried that this isn't going well. And I went through that with HORRORSTOR, and it kind of worried me, and they pulled the nose up at the end, and the end was awesome. The same thing for me with this story, although I kind of expected it this time, that we were getting that point where I thought we were there, and now we're getting problems. And I'll just say this: they pull the nose up on this one. Grady Hendrix did a great job. So when I read Horror Store, I loved the book, but I gave it reluctantly a 4 out of 5, and I felt like I was cheating that book, like it should have been higher. But I gave it a 4 out of 5. When I finished my best friend's Exorcism, I had to give it 5 out of 5. I just loved that story. I love the book. It's about teenage girls, and believe it or not, I'm not a teenage girl, and I never have been. That's a revelation. I'm letting you in on some inner secrets. I've never been a teenage girl before. But I immediately felt like I understood what it was like to be a teenage girl. In fact, I wish I'd have read this book when I was in 10th grade. Maybe I'd have understood more about teenage girls at that time. I feel like, man, that explains some things growing up in the 80s on how some of these teenage girls behaved and things they thought, the things they felt, maybe why they acted certain ways. This book, even though it was written by a guy, I feel like this guy understood a whole lot more about teenage girls than I ever have and probably ever will. But that being said, I was in this story the whole way. Not at one time ever did I say this story is not good. In fact, when I finished the book one day, the next day I was starting another book. I literally felt disappointed that I was starting the next book because I was no longer going to be in this world that Grady Hendrix had created. Reading time came up. I was going to go read feeling good, and I said, "Oh no, it's over. I'm starting a different book." And I felt a little bit of a doldrums that I was going to be starting something else. By the way, the book that I've started after that is good so far. Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones. And I've actually had a little bit of trouble switching from one to the next because of the language, not foul language, but just the way sentences are structured and things like that. A couple times I feel confused and I read that sentence again and it's plain as day, no mistakes. Just a different way of telling a story. But I'm liking that one as well. It's another one I've never read, Stephen Graham Jones, so I'm excited about getting into that once I got over the fact that I wasn't still in the world for my best friend's Exorcism. So 5 out of 5. If you haven't read it, read it. It's good. It's good from start to finish. I talked about this point in the story where I felt like things were great, settled, solved. We just had to write the end, and then it started to go downhill. I almost wonder if that's not a signature method of storytelling by Grady Hendrix. Maybe it is. I'm 2 books in, and both books I kind of got that. Neat. Now that I get it, I like it. The first book worried me that we were fixing to blow this thing that was going so well. This book, I kind of already had that idea of what was going to happen, and it turned out really well. So pick it up. Grady Hendrix, My Best Friend's Exorcism. The SST limited edition version here, signed and numbered 400, I think. 400 editions, 400 copies. The softcover edition looks terrific, looks great. One of the best looking covers I've ever seen. It looks like an old videotape from Mr. Video or Hollywood Video, places where we used to get movies when I was a kid. But I like it. Check it out. That's all the lies I can think of. Any more to tell might be too much of a spoiler if I haven't gone too far already. If I have, I'm sorry. I'll try not to do it again. That being said, c'est la vie, baby. Be some editing, 'cause I'm rambling. Man, I can sing good. Ain't I great?